Bivalve aquaculture is the farming of clams, mussels, oysters, or scallops. Oysters, of course, we have the eastern oyster, it's the principal one. We have sea scallops and we have blue mussels. And we farm them a variety of different ways. We typically start with very small seed from a hatchery where we spawn the parents. We take the moms and the dads and we get them to reproduce, and they produce little embryos which grow in tanks full of water, and we grow them in the water for a few weeks. And then they settle into essentially baby clams or oysters or scallops or mussels. And then we grow them up in different containers, mostly to protect them from predators and to provide them a space where they can grow quickly and be safe.
I'm Nate Henninger. I am one of the farm managers here at Madeline Point Oyster Farms, and I have been working on this farm since it started in 2018. We receive our oysters from this filtered environment, and once the oysters are grown to usually about 4 millimeters to a ½ inch, they are ready to go out on our farm.
Sometimes we grow oysters directly on the bottom. We just literally put the oysters on the bottom, unprotected, no cages, no nets, no predator screening of any sort. And the idea there is that it's a natural environment. Yeah, some will be eaten by crabs that might be moving by, but it's very cost effective because we don't have to have all that gear to keep clean. Other ways of farming those oysters could be up on the surface with floating cages that float right up high on the water column near the surface where the water is the warmest. But it's also easy to get at from a boat because now you can just lean over in a boat to tend to the gear.
From there, the oysters are sitting in bags of various mesh sizes within cages. They are feeding just off of the micronutrients that the ocean is able to provide for them. Throughout that process, we are responsible for making sure that the mesh in their bags is clean, that the oysters are clean, free of biofouling, making sure that they are able to breathe, if you will, and consume their micronutrients. We do that through flipping the cages from the water. That uses the sun and dry air to desiccate any typically plant growth. Biofouling is pretty much anything that is in or on our oyster cages, bags, that is not an oyster. Or is not wanted there. So biofouling can look like barnacles right here. These are actually been killed by us flipping them, so they come off really easily. Biofouling can look like little bits of seaweed, sea moss, just pretty much anything that's on the bag, and anything that gets in the way of the oysters breathing. These are oysters that were planted last week. We are pulling them up for the first time since we planted them in order to assess their growth, because at this stage they grow very quickly, and we're also pulling them in order to give them a very gentle sort of shape up. By shaking the bags, it breaks off a little bit of their shell and gives them a gentle version of a tumble. And we just want to keep these really clean because this is the entire future of our farm. This is 750,000 oysters, 5,000 oysters per bag. So we put a bunch of energy into making sure these survive, because if just one bag of oysters dies at this stage, that's 5,000 whole oysters. Sorting oysters by size is very important for their growth. Oysters have been studied to grow much better with other oysters that are the same size as them. So keeping them all aligned by size in the same bags and the same lines by size is an important way that we make our oysters grow a little faster. That tumbler is responsible for cleaning the oysters as well as sorting them by size. Tumbling the oyster can be thought of as like clipping their nails. That little bit of growth where you can see the light through it, that is like the white part of your fingernails. There's no oyster within it. It is just very new growth. So if we can tumble them and cut some of that off, then we can keep the oyster growing instead of out, growing into a shell. That tumbler also causes it to use its adductor muscle, which does both adduction and adduction, letting the oyster open and close. And when it is going through the tumbler, it is holding itself closed, and that muscle is getting almost a workout, if you will. It's like putting the oysters through a boxing match. And that is going to cause that muscle to get bigger and stronger, and then be more of a prominent flavor profile when they're consumed.
I'm Michael Scannell, and I'm the farm manager at Madeline Point Oyster Farms in Yarmouth, Maine. Oysters, they're like a rock, they're hard, hardy. You can't really mess up too much. It's just all about that preventative maintenance, I would say. Making sure you're flipping them, dealing with biofouling, and making sure you're grading them in a timely manner. Out of most species, they're pretty easy to grow. Like, for example, with scallops, you just have to pay attention a whole lot more. They're dainty.
My name is Madison Mayer. I am the aquaculture manager at the Hurricane Island Center for Science and Leadership, and I first became interested in aquaculture because I was studying marine science in undergrad and was specifically really interested in food systems. So on Hurricane Island, I manage a 3.2 acre scientific experimental research farm. So that means on our aquaculture farm, we're not selling anything we grow, but instead we're using it for research or for education and demonstration. We grow a couple different things on our farm. We grow Atlantic sea scallops, oysters, mussels, and kelp. But the thing that I spend the vast majority of my time on and the vast majority of my research projects are about are the Atlantic sea scallops. In order to grow scallops, we fish for them with a spat bag. So a spat bag is basically just a bag of thin mesh. Before the scallop is ready to settle out of the water column and begin its adult phase of its life, it'll just drift right in and out of this bag. But when it's ready to settle out and it's looking for a tough substrate to settle on, this material inside, which is called netron, provides a good habitat. So the idea behind the netron is we bunch it up so it fills out the bag and it creates as many possible spaces for the scallop to settle. And that's why it's this diamond-shaped mesh. These guys are put out in the fall, so the scallops are reproducing sort of end of summer, early fall, and we'll let them sit there all winter. And then in the early spring, we'll go out and we'll haul these bags back. And we'll put multiple of these bags on a line. So we'll put an anchor on the bottom and then a line all the way to the surface with a buoy on top. And typically for us, about 10 of these bags. Once we haul them back, we sort through them and we try and find all the little scallops.
Scallops like to grow in nets. We've tried growing them up on the surface in floating cages. They don't do very well, so we grow them vertically using nets.
There's a couple different gear types that we use to grow scallops in Maine. One of the slightly more common ones is called a lantern net. So you can imagine that this is basically an apartment building for sea scallops. So it's this big cylindrical net and I have different levels in it. So I can put scallops in each level. Sea scallops really like to have their own personal space. So we're typically only trying to cover about 25 to 30% of the bottom of each piece of gear with scallops. Lantern nets hang out in the middle of the water column. So we string them on something called a long line. And the idea behind that is that the long line is going to be deep enough below the surface of the water that it's not in conflict with any other users of the water, so a boat could drive right over it and it'd be no issue. And also that it's not right at the surface where there tends to be a whole bunch of life, and that also means that lots of things are growing on the gear and on the scallop itself. So just like land farming where you have to weed your garden, in aquaculture you often also have to clean your gear or even the animals themselves of different biofouling species. So a living organism that isn't doing anything wrong, it's just not growing where we want it to because it's maybe making our gear a little bit heavier or clogging up some of the mesh so it decreases water flow. And these animals need the water flow to be able to eat and breathe. So one of the things that you might notice about a scallop is that they like to clap open and shut. Something like a mussel or an oyster, when they shut, they can shut really, really tightly. So they can basically seal themselves off from the outside world. You can see even when I really gently squeeze them shut, there's still a little bit of his flesh showing. So sea scallops don't really like to be out of the water and they can't survive it nearly as long as something like an oyster or a mussel.
Mussels, we grow both on the bottom, where we just spread them out on the bottom and then come back after they're full size and harvest them. We also grow them on vertical lines where they're attached with their byssal thread to a line that's hanging in the water. They may be hanging from a big raft.
I think that one of the really cool things about aquaculture, especially in Maine, is increasing food production and increasing people's access to local food production as well. And so in my opinion, one of the really big kind of things that we can do to eat more sustainably is to eat closer to home as well. And so I think that one of the fun things about aquaculture is that kind of new food source and often a new protein source as well that can be close to home.
It's certainly a labor of love. So I think that folks need to understand that they need to understand where seafood comes from and the people behind what brings that product on the table.